And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition. I do have some real-time true crime for us.
Yay! I mean,
Um,
not.
mostly good news,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
So first, Alicia Navarro, who went missing from Glendale, Arizona in 2019, showed up in a police station in Montana on July 26th, asking to be removed from the missing persons list.
Mm-hmm.
She is now 18 years old, and she is autistic. The reason I mention this is because her mother, Jessica, had always wondered if her being autistic allowed Alicia to be manipulated into running away with someone online,
Mm-hmm.
which is where she had met most of her friends.
Yeah.
Basically, like, she had trouble socializing at school, so it was in a lot of online chat rooms, and she had in the past been known to talk to people who weren't being completely truthful on who they were.
Mm-hmm.
And Jessica wondered if she was lured out of her house by someone online. Alicia's mother has been working closely with the Anti-Predator Project, so we can put a link for you to support them in our episode notes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a GoFundMe for you.
Yeah.
All right, next, one of the Jane Does in the Gilgo Beach murders was identified as Karen Vergata after 27 years of not having a known identity.
Good.
Yeah. Last one, not so good. Fabian Marta, the producer of the Sound of Freedom film, which is the story of Operation Underground Railroad and their efforts to combat child sex trafficking, was charged with felony child kidnapping.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
All hope is dead.
Yeah. That was a rough one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I have for current things. So now I'm gonna take you all the way back to the 80s.
Nice.
You ready?
All the way back.
Look. Are you ready?
Yep.
On May 31st, 1985, Shari Smith was coming home from shopping near Columbia, South Carolina with her boyfriend Richard. At 3:38 p.m., Shari, a high school senior, was abducted from her driveway as she was checking the mail. Minutes later, Shari's father Robert came outside of their home to find Shari's car in the driveway by the mailbox. The door was open, the car was still running, and Shari's purse was still lying in the front seat. Robert knew something was wrong and called the Lexington County Sheriff's Department. His original concern was that Shari may have been passed out or become extremely disoriented due to her diabetes insipidus, which isn't actually a type of diabetes. So I don't know why it's called that. But it is a disease that causes the body to overproduce urine, often producing up to 20 quarts a day when the normal level is 1 to 3 quarts a day. However, the truth of where Shari would turn out to be was worse than what her dad was worried about. So, I'll tell you a little bit about Shari. Shari Faye Smith was born on June 25th, 1967, to Hilda and Robert Smith. Shari was the middle child with an older sister named Dawn and a younger brother named Robert Jr. At the time of Shari's abduction, she was 17 years old and was just 2 days away from singing the national anthem at her high school graduation and going on a cruise with her fellow graduates. Shari was described as beautiful, vivacious, bright, outgoing, and positive, with bouncy blonde curls, rosy cheeks, and shining blue eyes. Shari was regarded as the kind of person you could go to as a shoulder to cry on or someone to uplift you in tough times. Shari and her family were very close, influential in their community, and very active in their church. The people in Shari's community were shaken by her abduction, noting that things like this didn't happen in Columbia. This was the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, and everybody especially knew the Smiths. They embodied the family values the town held close. Everyone kind of looked up to their family. Sheriff Jim Metz quickly took on the case, ignoring the typical rule of waiting 24 hours to start a missing persons investigation and calling in help from state agencies, law enforcement from neighboring counties, and more than 1,000 civilian volunteers.
How old did you say she is?
17.
Okay.
He was able to quickly rule out any members of Shari's family and began looking into the strong possibility that this was a stranger abduction, despite Shari being considered a low-risk victim. The Smith family had been very public about their search for Shari and their openness to doing whatever it took to get her back when they got a phone call. The caller was a man who had disguised his voice and claimed to be holding Shari captive. He began by letting the family know that the call was real, and proving so by reminding them that Shari was wearing a yellow and black bathing suit under her shirt and shorts after being at a pool party the day she was taken.
And this call is coming in that same day? Or you said...
No.
Okay.
It was like after they started the search and like gone on the news to talk about her. I don't know exactly how much later. Yeah. I think like honestly just a few days.
Okay.
Hilda told the caller that Shari was ill, that she had diabetes insipidus, and would need food, water, and medication to keep her metabolism, hydration, and polyuria regulated. They used this as a way to personalize Shari with the kidnapper and give him credit for caring for her. Next, the caller tells the Smiths they will be receiving a letter later that day. When the 2-page letter did come, it was clear that it was Shari's handwriting. And down the side in capital letters, she had written, "God is love," and "Sir Richard," which is a combination of Shari and Richard. Okay. I know. I'm going to go ahead and read you this letter. So Shari wrote, June 1st, 1985 at 3:10 a.m. I love y'all. Last will and testament. I love you, Mommy, Daddy, Robert, Don, and Richard, and everyone else, and all the other friends and relatives. I'll be with my father now, so please, please don't worry. Just remember my witty personality and great special times we all shared together. Please don't ever let this ruin your lives. Just keep living one day at a time for Jesus. Some good will come out of this. My thoughts will always be with you. And then in parentheses, she writes, casket closed. I love you all so damn much. Sorry, Dad, I had to cuss for once. Jesus forgive me. Richard, sweetie, I really did and always will love you and treasure our special moments. I ask one thing, though. Accept Jesus as your personal savior. My family has been the greatest influence in my life. Sorry about the cruise money. Someday, please go in my place. I'm sorry if I ever disappointed you in any way. I only wanted to make you proud of me because I have always been proud of my family. Mom, Dad, Robert, and Don, there's so much I want to say that I should have before now. I love you. I know y'all love me and will miss me very much. But if y'all stick together like we always did, y'all can do it. Please do not become hard or upset. Everything works out for the good of those that love the Lord. All my love always. I love y'all with all my heart. Sharon Shari Smith. P.S. Nana, I love you so much. I kind of always felt like your favorite. You were mine. I love you a lot.
Dad.
I know.
Am I crazy for feeling like it seems like coded? Like I'm like trying to decipher something from it?
I don't think it's crazy to think that. I don't think it is.
Okay.
So, I think that's how she talked in her everyday life.
Well, just like the casket closed and like...
That's like, yeah. So, they point out that it's interesting because it says the top like last will and testament.
Yeah.
And it really isn't. except for the casket closed part.
Mm-hmm.
And the caller does bring that up later and explains why
Oh,
she
okay.
wrote that. So leading up to receiving the letter, Sheriff Metz had called in Robert Ivy, the special agent in charge of the FBI field office in Columbia, as well as Jim Wright and Ron Walker in Quantico. Wright and Walker believed that the abductor they were dealing with was someone sophisticated and dangerous, and they were sure he would do this again. They also believed that Shari was in danger if she wasn't already dead. Once they had received the notes, Sheriff Metz sent it to the crime lab at the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division to be tested for fingerprints. The agents at Quantico believed, based on what Shari had written, that she had, at that point, been murdered. Despite this, Shari's family tried their best to do what she had asked them to in the letter and remain hopeful.
Why do they think that?
I
She's obviously
think it's
alive when she wrote it, so like what indicates to them that she would have been killed by that point?
I think the casket closed thing.
Well, yeah, but that just means that she thinks she's gonna die. Like,
I think they also think that she had to write this letter to like prove she was alive, but that after that he didn't really need her to be.
okay.
On June 3rd, Hilda received another call from the kidnapper. This time he asked her if the letter had arrived and if they believed him. Hilda replied by saying, "Well, I'm not sure I believe you because I haven't heard any word from Shari, and I need to know that Shari is well." The kidnapper told her that she would know in 2 or 3 days. This response seemed cryptic and put Shari's family into a whirlwind of anxiety, but they didn't have to wait as long as he had said to find out more about Shari.
Mm-hmm.
Later that evening, the kidnapper called again to tell the family that Shari was in fact still alive and he would be releasing her back to them soon. However, as the family and the investigators listened more closely to the call, they began to believe otherwise. For example, one of the things the caller said to Hilda was, "I want to tell you one other thing. Shari is now a part of me. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Our souls are now one. Shari is protected, and she is a part of me now, and God looks after all of us."
What in the fuck?
I listened to a podcast where they played the recordings, and her mom has like the sweetest voice, and like she is trying to be so calm the whole time. She's like, "Well, I don't think I do believe you because I haven't heard from Shari." And he's like, "Well," but like she's trying so hard to like keep him at bay.
Yeah, and you
It's
like don't want to
hard.
say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It's tough. The police traced the calls, but unfortunately they came from public payphones in the area, so they were going to have to rely on the copies they made of the recorded phone calls to help them figure out who the kidnapper might be. Sheriff Metz believed he would call again, so he began to prep the Smiths on how to handle any more calls moving forward. And then I put, which I already kind of touched on this, but having listened to the calls, there is not an ounce of like guilt or confusion on his part. He is yelling at them each time he speaks to them, and in a strong juxtaposition to how desperate this family sounds, he sounds very careless about everything. And Hilda, like I said, she's like speaking very calmly. She also like thanks him several times on the calls for taking care of Shari. She's like, "I know you love Shari. Like, I'm so grateful that you have her and you're taking care of her."
Which is
like,
smart.
Yeah, is what she was told to do.
Yeah. Well, especially
and like
as
it's hard to do, and she did it.
Yeah, but especially as he starts to say like she's part of me, like emotionally, like okay, then like appeal to emotion, you know? Like he's not actually really wanting anything out of this so far, I guess.
Investigators advised the family to listen carefully to the caller, repeat and ask questions to make sure they understand his messages, and to try to get him to respond in a way that could give them more information about who he was. The investigators believed this would encourage the kidnapper to continue contacting Shari's family and sharing more information with them, and it should allow the caller to stay on the phone long enough for the police to get a successful trace and locate him. They said that they had to be on the phone for 15 minutes to get a trace, and they weren't lasting that long up to this point. Luckily, their next opportunity came just the next day when the kidnapper called and asked to speak to Dawn, Shari's 21-year-old sister. Keep in mind, Shari's been gone for 4 days at this point.
Okay.
What'd you say?
I don't like that.
No. Shari's been gone for about 4 days at this point. The caller explained to Dawn that on the day Shari was taken, he pulled up to the mailbox, struck up a conversation, and took some photos of Shari, and then forced her into the car at gunpoint.
Why did he take
He then tells her...
what was his excuse to her?
Yeah. I don't know. He kind of made it sound like he was just, like, casually was like, can I take pictures of you? And she was like, sure.
Weird.
I don't know. He then tells her he regrets how this whole situation has gotten out of hand, which is never, like, a good sign.
Yeah.
He then says, okay, 4:58 a.m. No, I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. 3:10 a.m. Saturday, the 1st of June. She hand wrote what you received. 4:58 Saturday, the 1st of June. We became one soul. Dawn did as she was instructed by investigators and repeated important information. So she said, became one soul. Then Hilda heard Dawn say that and said, what does that mean? And the caller said, no questions now. He then assured the family that blessings were near and they should have an ambulance standing by, clarifying that it was for Shari's medical condition and not because she was injured, and that they would be receiving instructions on where to find them.
I feel like...
He reminded them...
You don't have to answer this, because I know I always ask questions that you're going to answer, so just this is a thought. Is that it feels like ironic, I don't know if that's the word I want, but like a weird coincidence that like this person would be also like uber religious. And like, yeah, they're in the South. Like, they're in South Carolina. I guess those are pretty good odds. But like, it seems that she is uber religious and her family is uber religious. Mm-hmm. So then it like makes me think in my mind, like, is this someone who knew her like from church or like knew that she was religious? Because it feels like that is like a very deep connection that they're having that like would have just been very convenient finding someone on the street. But yeah, just my thought.
He reminded them several times that they were looking in the wrong county for Shari.
Okay.
He also told them that Shari had some requests in the event that something were to happen to him. So, like, he's saying, Shari says, if something goes wrong and you do something to me, this is what she wants.
Okay.
He said she insisted that only family and Sheriff Metz be there to greet her, no circus, and no strangers.
No circus?
And that she's asked...
Okay, cool.
She's asked that in addition to the casket closed request she put in her letter, she would also like her hands folded over her stomach like in prayer.
Okay.
So obviously not encouraging.
Okay, right, but it like seems like, does he know that he's giving that away? Like, it seems like he's both trying to say like, you're gonna get her safe, like she's not her, like she's just gonna meet up with you, but also like, don't forget, like she's still gonna want to be married. Like,
yeah, I think he's given up on the charade at this point.
Well, then why did he say the ambulance isn't because she's injured?
I mean that in the sense that I think he's being like careless.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So Hilda tried her best to assure him that no harm would come to him and begged him not to kill her daughter. The next day he called again and Hilda answered. As promised, the caller gave the following directions. Listen carefully. Take Highway 378 west to Traffic Circle. Take Prosperity exit, go 1.5 miles, turn right at sign Moose Lodge number 103. Go 1/4 mile, turn left at white framed building, go to backyard, 6 feet beyond, we're waiting. God chose us. Following the instructions given by the caller, Sheriff Metz was led directly to Sherry's body, just 18 miles away from her home in neighboring Saluda County. She was still wearing the yellow top and white shorts she was last seen in, but investigators were able to tell, based on the state of decomposition, that she'd been dead for several days. They believed that his previous comment of them becoming one soul at 4:58 a.m. on June 1st was actually an admission of the moment Shari was killed. They noted that the condition of Sherry's body made it impossible to determine the cause of death and whether or not Shari had been sexually assaulted.
Just because she was so far decomposed?
Yeah, it is May in South Carolina.
Oh, I was like, it's not been like...
Or it's June in South Carolina.
Okay.
And it's been, I think, 6 days.
Okay.
They also wondered if it was possible that this was intentional on the killer's part, placing the calls and giving the family hope of a return with Shari in order for her body to decompose enough for physical evidence to be lost.
Maybe.
However, they were still able to find tape residue on Sherry's face and hair, although the tape itself had been removed. So they believed, based on the level of planning this crime seemed to take, that this would not have been a first crime. They believed the killer was older and intelligent and had forced himself to believe he was in a relationship with Shari, which is why he only felt comfortable revealing the location of her body when she had become too decomposed for him to handle. Part of what led them, like, they thought that he was likely going back to see her body.
Oh, I see.
Or, like, keeping her body with him.
Spending time with her body.
And by the time, and as she was decomposing, it became harder for him to continue the illusion that they were in a relationship because she didn't look human anymore.
Yeah, okay.
Part of what led them to this conclusion was his consistent use of Sherry's first and middle names. This wasn't typical for those who knew Shari, and they believed it was a way for him to prove he had a special relationship with her and had a nickname for her that only he used. So every time he called them, he always called her Shari Faye. Okay. And she did not go by Shari Faye, she just went by Shari.
Okay.
Per John Douglas and the Behavioral Science Unit's profiling, investigators believed they were looking for someone with the following traits. Late 20s to early 30s, married early but divorced quickly, likely living alone or with his parents, with a criminal record likely made up of assaults on women, obscene phone calls, other, like, petty sexually based crimes. If he had committed any other murders, it would be of young girls, but not sex workers, because he would be intimidated by them.
Okay.
He had gone back to the scene where he had left Sherry's body several times, was reading from a script each time he called the family. He would be extremely neat and rigid with routines. He likes to take notes and keep lists. Had a well-maintained car that was 3 years old or newer. Would be outwardly arrogant and annoyed with the world, but inwardly insecure. Local to Sherry's area for most or all of his life, and would have a background in electronics, home construction, or remodeling, based on his ability to manipulate his voice on the phone calls with the family. They believed he was doing this with, like, a machine of some sort.
Okay.
So, that's what they're looking for.
Okay. Very specific.
Yes. The next day, Sherry's family had begun to plan her funeral arrangements when her killer called again. He asked to speak with Dawn, and he told her he would be turning himself in the following morning, that she would be able to find the photos of Shari he had taken during the abduction in the mailbox, and that he would appreciate her forgiveness and prayers. Then he backpedaled a bit and said that he was actually considering completing suicide instead of turning himself in. And then he made this comment: I am a family friend, which makes it worse.
Mm.
That's why it's hard to face, y'all. This thing got out of hand, and all I wanted to do was make love to Dawn. I've been watching her for a couple of. And then Dawn interrupts him and says, to who? Because he did not say Shari.
Mm-hmm.
And the caller corrected himself, saying, I'm sorry, to Shari. And I watched her a couple of weeks, and it's just got out of hand. After this call, moving forward, the killer would continuously confuse Dawn and Shari, leading investigators to believe that it was possible he had been watching both sisters and viewed them as interchangeable.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't care which one he got. He liked both of them.
Yeah.
This also led them to believe that it might be possible to use Dawn as bait to catch him.
Mm-hmm.
He may have been targeting her next. They believed the killer they were dealing with was a narcissist who was building an idea of himself to present to Shari's family, and that the longer he kept it up, the more he would believe it and the more dangerous he would become to others, especially to people who shared the same traits as Shari. On the night of Shari's funeral, a collect call came in asking for Dawn, claiming to be Shari. Obviously, it was not Shari.
Yeah.
Instead, the caller told Dawn the following. So, from about 2 in the morning from the time she actually knew until she died at 4:58, we talked a lot and everything, and she picked the time. She said she was ready to depart. God was ready to accept her as an angel. Then he told Dawn that he had had sex with Shari and then given her a choice of death between shooting, drug overdose, and suffocation, and she had chosen suffocation in the end, which is why she was found with tape residue on her face. He had suffocated her with duct tape over her nose and mouth. He then told Dawn again that he would be turning himself in soon. Dawn asked the caller why he had to kill her sister, to which he replied, it got out of hand. I got scared because only God knows, Dawn. I don't know why. God forgive me for this. I hope, and I got to straighten it out, or he'll send me to hell, and I'll be there the rest of my life, but I'm not going to be in prison or the electric chair.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So they think he's done this before.
Mm-hmm.
But they also think he's, like, looking for people with Shari's traits or, like, whatever. So, like, is that a part of their profile that, like, the other, like, his previous victims would look like Shari or, like, would be similar?
I think in general, yes, probably, like, the same hair and eye color as Shari, but they believed that if he had killed anyone before, it would have been a child.
Okay.
Because that would have been, like, easier. They would be easier for him to, like, overpower.
So this might be the first, like, fixation and, like, relationship one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. At this point, Dawn and Hilda, who, like, I have to say, like, their faith in humanity, in the world, in God is, like, off the charts. Asked the killer to turn himself over to God instead of completing suicide.
What does that even mean?
Like,
just,
they were
confess?
like, yeah, I think, like, ask forgiveness. Like, truly repent. John Douglas was confident that he was never planning on completing suicide, as he had suggested he may do to Dawn, and he believed that the killer was using this as a tactic to get the family to empathize with him.
Yeah.
They also believed that he was getting bolder, thinking it was less likely that he would be caught, even admitting he was at the funeral.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the unthinkable happens. 2 weeks to the day after Shari Smith was kidnapped, on June 14th, Around 4 p.m., blonde-haired, blue-eyed 9-year-old Debra May Helmick was taken from her front yard in Richland County, just 24 miles from the Smith home, while playing outside with her brother. At the time Debra was abducted, her father was still inside their trailer home 20 feet away. Like with Shari, a neighbor saw a car pull up to Debra in her yard, speak with her briefly, and then pull her into the car before driving off. Immediately, Mr. Helmick and the neighbor who had witnessed the kidnapping took off after the car, but they quickly lost it.
Yeah, my kid is never going outside, dude. Ever.
Mm-mm. Sheriff Metz was on the case once again and had quickly begun an extensive search for Debra. Investigators believed that despite the age difference between Shari and Debra, that the abductor was the same in both cases. The similarities in the facilitation of the abductions and the features of the girls caused investigators to believe they would soon be dealing with a serial killer, not just a serial kidnapper. They maintained the original profile the FBI team had developed with a few more specifics. Their perpetrator was likely white, shy and polite, insecure, overweight, and unattractive to women. When using the profile to help the public find this man, they also noted that they should look for the following changes in his behavior. He would be more obsessive compulsive than ever, losing weight, drinking heavily, neglecting to shave, talking about Shari's murder with other locals, following reports on television and in the newspaper, collecting porn, specifically depictions of bondage and sadomasochism, and showing more confidence as the case gains more notoriety. They also believe that selecting Debra was intentional because her age made her more approachable, but that he would feel more guilty about taking her than he did with Shari and wouldn't be placing any calls to her family.
I mean,
On one hand,
not like that's sad, I guess. That's like torture
yeah.
for Shari's family in and of itself,
Yeah.
but it doesn't help them catch him, you know?
Yeah. On one hand, the Helmicks didn't have a phone.
Oh.
But on the other hand, he likely wouldn't be able to make the situation out to be a relationship in his head like he did with Shari.
Mm-hmm.
So they just didn't see him like being confident enough to call them and be like, no, this is what Debra wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Investigators were confident in what kind of person they were looking for, just not sure who the person was. So they continued their investigation, looking back at all of the sites central to the case and releasing their profile to other agencies. They also noted that he had ceased calling the Smiths, but John Douglas believed he could get him to start calling them again. To entice the killer to reinitiate contact, John and the Smiths set up a memorial service at Shari's grave. Family members gave speeches and left flowers and one of Shari's favorite stuffed animals at the cemetery.
God, imagine like getting up and speaking, knowing like he's probably here.
Yeah.
Or like at the very least watching, but like honestly probably there. Like how fucking nerve-wracking. Like I'd be like the whole time.
They'd also arranged for the memorial to be heavily publicized in hopes that the killer would either attend, reach back out to the family, or better yet, come take the stuffed animal. That's what they thought he was going to do. The investigators paid close attention to anyone who came and to cars and license plates that drove by. The next day, just after midnight, another collect call came for Dawn, again claiming to be from Shari. The caller began by asking if he was speaking with Dawn and stating that the call was not a hoax. Then he said, okay, God wants you to join Shari Faye. It's just a matter of time. This month, next month, this year, next year, you can't be protected all the time. Have you heard about Debra May Helmick, the 10-year-old? Helmick. Okay, listen carefully. Go one west, turn left at the Peach Festival Road or Bill's Grill, go 3.5 miles through Gilbert, turn right, Last dirt road before you come to the stop sign at 2 Notch Road. Go through chain and no trespassing sign. Go 50 yards and to the left, go 10 yards. Deborah May is waiting. God forgive us all.
Jeez.
This time, the caller did not alter his voice at all.
But do they know that?
They can tell that he's not speaking through a machine.
Yeah, but I mean, don't some machines alter them to sound like somewhat natural?
Probably not in the 80s.
Yeah, I guess.
Police followed the directions he gave and found Deborah right where he had indicated, hidden under some brush. Coroners believe she had been dead for several days, and her body was badly decomposed due to the heat. They were only able to identify her based on her clothing. She was still wearing the outfit she had been abducted in, with one addition. Over her underwear, she was wearing a pair of adult underwear, which made John Douglas wonder if these may have belonged to a previous victim of the killer, and this made the search for him even more intense.
Mm-hmm. But they ruled out that they weren't Shari's? Like, they weren't...
She wasn't wearing underwear when she was abducted. She was wearing a bathing suit.
Okay.
In addition to working on tracing the call, investigators were working to run tests on the note Shari had written. They ran a test with something called an ESTA machine, which can identify impressions made from pages higher up in a notepad, like the one Shari's note had come from. So, like, kind of like how you...
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how you, like, shade to see what was written before.
Mm-hmm.
They noted a grocery list and what they believed to be a phone number. It was 205-837-13, an unidentifiable number, 8.
Okay. There's only 10 numbers that could go in there. Come on now.
Exactly. Using the knowledge that 205 is the area code for Huntsville, Alabama, they cross-referenced this with which people with matching phone numbers had a relationship to the Columbia-Lexington County region in North Carolina.
Okay.
So they were like, there's 10 people we can choose from.
Mm-hmm.
Which ones from Huntsville also have something to do with here? They found that one of those phone numbers had received several calls from a home 15 miles from the Smiths' family home several weeks before Shari was taken.
Yeah, this really is an episode of Criminal Minds.
I know. The home belonged to Ellis and Sharon Shepard. Investigators went to visit the Shepards in their home. Ellis Shepard did not match their profile, so they felt pretty confident that he wasn't involved in the murders. However, he did admit to placing the calls to the number they found on the legal pad. He's like, yeah, I wrote that number down and I called it. The couple explained that their son had been stationed in Huntsville when he was in the Army, which explained the multiple calls, and they had an alibi for the time of both murders. They had been out of town. They were on a very long vacation.
Yeah.
So, next, investigators gave the Shepards the profile they had come up with for their killer, asking if that sounded like anyone they knew.
Didn't they just want to ask who they were calling when they called that number?
They said they were calling their son.
Oh. So, is it not their son?
So, yeah, no. So, the number on the pad isn't the phone number of the caller.
Right, okay.
It's a phone number that
the caller was calling.
Someone from that home had called.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all that means is that both the killer and these people have both called that person before.
Not necessarily.
Or have both written that number down.
Not necessarily.
It
just means that the notepad that Shari had written the note from belonged to someone or had been used by someone who had called that phone number.
So we're not assuming she was using the killer's notepad?
You'll see.
Okay. Would you, if you were me, you would not assume she was using the killer's notepad?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
But we've already established whose notepad it is and that person did not kill her.
How do we establish that it's there? Like, you can't write a number on different notepads?
Because it's in their house.
Oh, they found the notepad in their house.
Well, they said, they're like, yes, we wrote that phone number down on our notepad because it belonged to our son.
Okay. I'm so stressed.
So they show them the profile. They ask if it sounds like anyone they knew. And immediately, they both identified the profile as being an exact match for Larry Gene Bell, a man that had house sat for them for 6 weeks while they had been on vacation.
Oh!
To the credit of the profilers, the Shepherds gave them the following description of Gene, as they called him. Early 30s, divorced with a son who luckily lived with his ex-wife. Shy, heavy-set, worked for Ellis Shepard doing electrical wiring and housework, was meticulous and organized, lived with his parents, talked incessantly about Shari's kidnapping and murder, and had recently lost weight, stopped shaving, and was agitated more than usual. Next, investigators asked Ellis if he had a gun, which he did. He brought them back into the house to show them, and it was not there.
No. Ellis.
I know.
When someone house sits for you for 6 weeks, check your shit afterwards.
I know. They searched throughout the house and found it under Jean's guest bed mattress.
Okay. You didn't think they would think that's weird?
Slept in your guest bed for 6 weeks and you didn't strip the sheets?
Well, you don't move the mattress when you do that.
I think that if I was stripping the sheets, I think I would, feel a lump.
Yeah, I guess.
They were able to determine that it had recently been fired and was jammed. Next to it, under the mattress, they found a copy of Hustler magazine with a picture on the cover of a bound and crucified blonde woman.
Okay.
Detectives played the recording of the unaltered phone call to Dawn, and Ellis confirmed that the voice belonged to Larry Gene Bell. The last piece of the puzzle was sheriffs finding photos from Shari's memorial of Bell's vehicle parked near the gravesite. Larry Gene Bell was arrested as he was leaving his parents' house for work. They brought him into a trailer that had been staged to look like the headquarters of a task force built around Shari and Debra's cases.
What is that? Like, they made him think he was helping?
No, they walked him in and, basically there are pictures of them all over the walls. There's, theories written everywhere, making it look like they have, which they have, they've dedicated so much to this, and so that when he walked in, he knew what was going on.
Okay.
When he walked in, he went as white as a ghost and quickly waived his Miranda rights and agreed to an interview.
Okay, whatever.
As the sheriff's deputies were interviewing Bell, another set of deputies were searching his home for any evidence of the crime. They found more signs of obsessive-compulsive behavior as well as bondage porn, but more importantly, they found directions to his parents' house written in the same style as the directions he gave for his dump sites. So, turn at this sign, turn left at this sign, go all the way down to this part. They found hairs matching Shari on his bed, and the same commemorative stamps used to mail Shari's letter to her family in his home.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Don't get commemorative stamps.
Don't murder people in your bed.
Yes, but when shown a photo of Bell, the neighbor who witnessed Debra's abduction identified him as the man who had taken her. When looking into his background, investigators learned that Bell had been involved in several sexual crimes since the time he was a child.
Who does he live with?
His parents.
Oh, so that was correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When he was 26, he tried to force a 19-year-old woman into his car with a knife. Instead of serving prison time, he agreed to psychiatric counseling, but after quitting 2 sessions in, he received no further consequences.
Great.
Apparently, if you just say you don't want to do it, you don't have to.
Awesome.
5 months later, he forced another college-age woman into his car at gunpoint. He received a 5-year prison sentence, but was paroled after 21 months. During his probation, he was found to have made over 80 obscene phone calls to a 10-year-old girl. Okay. He pleaded guilty to this and was given extended probation time. Despite this extensive criminal history, Bell insisted that he had nothing to do with the murders and that his interest in the cases did not equate to guilt. Then, Sheriff Metz brought Bell into the room where the FBI agents had been working on the case, saying, "Do you know who these boys are? These boys are from the FBI. You know, they did a profile, and it fits you right down to a T. Mm-hmm. Now these boys want to talk to you for a little bit." Sheriff Metz left, and John Douglas began talking to Bell, telling him that he believed Bell was denying the crimes because he felt bad about what he had done. He said, "Going into the penitentiaries and interviewing all these subjects, one of the things we found is that the truth almost never gets out about the background of the person. And generally, when a crime like this happens, it's like a nightmare to the person who commits it. They're going through so many precipitating stressors in their life, financial problems, marital problems, or problems with a girlfriend. The problem for us, Larry, is that when you go to court, your attorney probably isn't going to want you to take the stand, and you'll never have the opportunity to explain yourself. And all they'll know about you is the bad side of you. Nothing good about you, just that you're a cold-blooded killer. And as I say, we found that very often when people do this kind of thing, it is like a nightmare. And when they wake up the next morning, they can't believe they've actually committed this crime. When did you start feeling bad about the crime, Larry?" And Bell said, "When I saw a photograph and read a newspaper article about the family praying in the cemetery." John asked Bell if it's possible
John.
He asked if it was possible he had committed the murders, and he began to tear up, saying, "All I know is that the Larry Gene Bell sitting here couldn't have done this, but the bad Larry Gene Bell could have." Finally, the investigators brought Dawn and Hilda in to meet Bell as one last-ditch effort to get a full confession.
Yeah, but God, they have been through enough with this plan.
When they arrived, Dawn shouted, "It's you. I know it's you. I recognize your voice." But still, he didn't make any clear confession. Instead, Larry Gene Bell went to trial that following January for Shari's murder in Berkeley County near Charleston. He never testified or admitted to the murders, but after a weeks-long trial and a 47-minute jury deliberation... 47 minutes!
Boy, that must feel painful.
Bell was found guilty of kidnapping and first-degree murder and was sentenced to death. He was tried separately for the kidnapping and murder of Debra Helmick with the same verdict and punishment. On October 4th, 1996, at the age of 46, Larry Gene Bell was executed by electric chair. Which is interesting because he told Dawn on the phone that he would not be going to the electric chair.
Yeah.
And for a man who talked so much, in order to taunt Shari's family, he had no final words.
Good, though.
To end on a happy note.
Okay.
Do you have questions?
Yeah. So do they think that, like, it was only those two then? Like, because was it only because he had 6 weeks available in those people's house? Or, like, do they think he was doing this in his parents? Like, I just don't... that seems like such an opportunity that he took, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think that there's, like, some mixed ideas.
Yeah.
I think that on one hand, it could be that there's, like, a clear escalation.
Right.
Where he had, like, attempted to kidnap women in the past. He had been making these phone calls. And then, yes, this one was, like, an opportunity because he was staying close by.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say they also did find that, like, some other places he had lived that women had gone missing, but I might be thinking of someone else.
Okay.
And I feel like I would have put that in there.
Mm-hmm.
But so I think they don't think that, like, it's not possible,
Right.
but they also can see it being, like, an escalation.
Yeah. Well, and then I also wonder, like, Shari's hair was found in his bed. Is that assumed that, like, he took her to his house? Is that assumed that it was, like, on him? Is it assumed that it was after she was dead? Like, I just don't know.
I think...
Because I would think you would use the empty house you're staying in to do everything.
Yeah. I think it's one hair, so...
Could have just
it's
been
very
on him.
possible that it was on him.
Yeah.
And then he got in his bed.
Yeah.
Alright, do you want the happy note?
Yeah.
Okay. Dawn Smith went on to become Miss South Carolina in 1986.
Okay, girl.
Which is the year after her sister's murder trial.
Jesus.
And was a runner-up for Miss America.
Wow.
She got married and became a country and gospel singer. While it's tragic to think that Shari and Debra could have been just as successful, it's also wonderful to know that Dawn, who had also been stalked by Larry Jean Bell, was able to do just what Shari had asked her and became truly happy with her life. She looks so much like Shari, and they're both, like, so beautiful. And yeah, she just, like, her Instagram, she seems really happy.
Yeah.
I'll throw. Yeah.
Yay. For good.
I will give y'all a heads up that a lot of the cases I'm about to do are Mindhunter cases.
Oh.
So I have a lot of profiling going on.
Woo. All right, that was good.
Thanks. Had you heard that before?
Nope.
Oh.
I don't know anything about Mindhunter. I don't even know what it is that you're referencing.
It's a book.
Oh.
By Glenn Douglas.
But you said it's also a show?
Yeah. The guy that you said did a good job getting, when he was like, so when did you feel bad about this?
Yeah.
Yeah. He helped start the behavioral science unit at the FBI to do profiling. Coined the term serial killer.
Nice.
And it was turned into a Netflix series, which is really good.
I've seen, like, the cover, but
yeah. But yeah, the book has, like, references to a lot of cases, a lot of, like, well-known serial killer cases, but also some lesser-known cases. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a really good book. It took me a really long time to read it, though.
Yeah, I bet it did. All right.
Okay.
Sources?
Oh. Mindhunter.
That's it? Great.
Crime Junkie.
Okay.
And I think a website.
Okay.
Called Talk Murder With Me.
I'll just put it in the show notes. It's great.
I think he talks about the case you were talking about in Mindhunter, in the book.
Probably. Yeah, I'm scared to do that one. So, I was gonna leave off on one thing. Me and Mary are thinking of a little Halloween series for October, but I'm gonna put in the show notes a question I think we need help coming up with, like, a title. Like, Hulu has Huluween or, like, whatever. And I think we need a little name. So I'll put that in the show notes and see what people think. Yeah. It's great. Cecil Hotelween.
Hotelween.
So, that's all
American
I got.
Housewives Story Hotel.
No.
Yeah, help us.
Help. Send help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
See you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.